So, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome entrepreneur, real estate specialist, and consultant Timothy Blake. So, welcome, Timothy.
Karen, thank you very much. It is such a pleasure to be here. I'm honored to be in the presence of this type of podcast where you interview, obviously, a lot of very notable people, and just privileged to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So, firstly, I would like to congratulate you on all your achievements. Can you please share with us how your entrepreneurial and consulting and real estate journey started?
Well, wow, good question. It goes way back to, on the entrepreneurial side, I was putting my way through Cal at UC Berkeley, and I could use some extra money. So being the kind of the inventive type, I created a bicycle rack for my Volkswagen, and I named it the Beetle Bike Bear. I did it with a couple of friends of mine, and I created a bike rack to go on the back of my Volkswagen because nothing else would work in the bike shops.
Mm-hmm.
And I went on to use that in my spirit of trying to make a little extra money, and wound up making over a couple thousand bike racks. And it was quite a thing in the day for the back of Volkswagens. So it was very fun, got me off on that running. Real estate, oh my gosh, Karen, that was a natural draw for me. My dad was in the mortgage lending business for years, and I used to go around with him, go to the office, and he would introduce me to his friends. And I was just excited about real estate from an early age. And the consulting, that came much later. That was a byproduct of my interest in architecture. So.
Oh, okay. Amazing. So, you really have an impressive career. So let's start off with real estate. After following a degree from UC Berkeley, can you share with us how you got into real estate, and where you positioned yourself in the real estate market, and what makes you unique in such a highly competitive industry based out of Silicon Valley?
Well, it may, Karen, stem from my degree in architecture to begin with. And
Yeah.
while I was in architecture, I still had a strong business interest.
Yeah.
And it took me a little bit off the track of architecture itself.
Mm-hmm.
And my father was kind enough to introduce me to a senior sales consultant at a commercial real estate company, Coldwell Banker, here in the Valley. And next thing I know, at the early age, just after working for a couple of law firms to see if I wanted to become an attorney, I thought, you know what, I really, really like this real estate. So almost as old as I was being perceived as, really, you got a driver's license, you can drive. I was in commercial real estate. So I got an early start. Then I wound up working in small apartments, in investments, because I was too young to be considered a senior sales consultant, but I loved investments. So I got involved in that really early on. And then I wound up graduating after working for a developer for a little bit, being his head of marketing at a group that was a limited partnership. And we bought properties throughout the Western US. And all of a sudden I was in the research mode and got to analyze major institutional investments. And that gave me a springboard to wind up being the director of acquisitions for the City of San Jose Pension Fund. And we purchased about $5 million over the course of several years. And that was a great run. So lots of things that I evolved into doing. And I became rather a cross-pollinator when I got back into the real estate side, working with, from a corporate standpoint, working with high-level executives that were coming into Silicon Valley, and with a corporate background and that kind of, that kind of connection source with them. I just had a great time interacting with these high-level people. So
Yes,
it was just fun for me.
Oh, great. So what would you say some of your biggest lessons or career lessons and learnings have been?
Oh my. I would think, Karen, probably one of the biggest assets I've acquired is just the art of asking questions and listening.
Yes.
And just being really thoughtful and getting into somebody's space and being all there for them, and them knowing that I really cared about their best interest,
Yes.
whether a sale was going to happen or not,
Yes.
and just get that cemented so that they would look at me as just kind of a valued advisor rather than a salesperson.
Yes, of course. So you have extensive connections with architects. What and why did you choose the consulting path? Your focus would predominantly, or your focus has predominantly been in Northern and Southern California, on big commercial development. So can you share with us more about this, and how did you break into such a highly competitive industry, to get to where you are today?
That's interesting. I think, Karen, it really evolved because you know how you can do things and you just really want to do something to help somebody else and it's not about the money.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
I I had a good friend who I introduced to somebody in a manufacturing company. It was a concrete flooring company.
Mhm.
And next thing I knew, he became the CEO of the company. I said, great connection, glad to do that. And and then because they dealt with general contractors on a commercial level, architects, that kind of thing, I said, hey, Greg, I've got a architectural background. I know some architects. Could I do you a favor and just introduce you to some architects? And he said, oh, that'd be great.
Mm.
So I introduced him to some of the architect people that I knew. And after a couple of weeks of doing that, he says, Tim, this is really valuable. You're just kind of knocking the socks off the quote unquote salespeople we have. Could you do more of this? We'll pay you. I said, pay me? He said, yeah, because I was living in the world of real estate. And he
Yeah.
said, yeah, if you can do that, that would be wonderful. And I said, you know what? I really like to elevate you and make you all the success I can. Let's do that. So long story short, I wound up going into the doors of higher level significant architects that I had never communicated with before. And just based on my background in architecture, I would dive into, again, high level people, look at their references on LinkedIn,
Mm.
identify who I wanted to talk to, head principal of the firm, and create dialogues, ask them questions, what their concerns were.
Mm.
And long story short, wound up creating this career of multi layers of different architects up and down the state. The owner of the company at one point says, Tim, you're doing a great job up here. We need to find somebody like you in Southern California. I said, well, I'll do that too, because they have multiple offices. So I
Yes, of
was
course.
covering all of California. So
Amazing. So you've worked with some of the biggest global brands, but also the biggest in Silicon Valley. These are not things that happen overnight. And in a city that is massively competitive, how and when did you get your break into the industry, that changed the trajectory into the industry, where your career is now?
well, interestingly enough, because my background was largely a corporate background,
Yes,
being in the corporate real estate side of limited partnerships, director of acquisitions, I was more with a corporate hat on.
yes,
So when I re-immersed myself into the residential world, I really gravitated towards helping higher level people. That's just kind of what spoke to me.
yes, of
So
course.
as a result of that, I just established myself as a reputation of being kind of a valued advisor and almost, Karen, an informal recruiter for these companies, whether it was Hewlett Packard or it was Apple or any number of companies, that when they came to town and they were interviewing to see if they wanted to take the job, I would say, you are so fortunate to be here and so fortunate to be talking to these people. It's an awesome company, great culture. And by the way, let me introduce you to some of the other people that I've come across. And I would cross pollinate, introduce them to the Valley. And it was fun once. I got a gift from a client of mine, and it was a book by Malcolm Gladwell, and it was it was all about one of the aspects in the book was connectors. And she said,
Yes,
Tim, you're a connector. And I just wanted to thank you because thanks to you, all the people that we first came to know in the Valley were because of the connections you gave to us.
Amazing, amazing. So leadership is a big subject, or lack of leadership. So can you share with us what makes your leadership style so different when working with the team? And what do you think as entrepreneurs we need to do differently to improve the current narrative on both an entrepreneurial and global scale?
Oh my. I think, Karen, leadership, at least in my world, is one of serving other people
Yes,
and inspiring others to help them achieve what they can have as their objectives,
yes,
and just believing in them to the point of helping them believe in capabilities even beyond where they think they can go, just as any coach would do. And I
yes, of
thought,
course.
if I can be a servant to them, help them achieve what they want, then I wind up benefiting because of their success.
Yes, of course. So as COVID-19 has turned our world upside down and inside out, how have you had to adapt and change, and how do you believe this has impacted and sorry impacted that not only in real estate and consulting, but also um, if you could give us some examples of how you've changed or how you've had to adapt during this time.
Oh my. Yeah, COVID has been incredibly disrupting. Um, I I don't think people really associate real estate being associated with supply chain management,
Yeah,
as in, engineering and high tech, but it is all about supply chain. There are so many different components of the simplicity and the complexity of a real estate transaction. There's so many different players. It's a
yeah,
team of people that makes a transaction work. And if there's one link in that supply chain that breaks, oh my gosh, you got a real challenge on your hands. So there's been so much in the corporate structure that has kind of worked on going to, okay, how do we deal with this? And the American culture and the fiber of America, let alone people in other countries that are entrepreneurial, have to adapt fast. I remember my dad told me years ago, Karen, he said, well, when you're in the world of real estate, you got to be able to move fast on your feet because nothing ever stays the same.
no,
So, with that idea in mind, the other aspect is the psychology of people, which is so critical. You start with somebody who's interested in maybe doing something in real estate. Typically, people are interested for their own right in doing something as like a buyer for something in real estate in times of certainty.
yeah,
Well, I don't think you could have much more of an uncertain time than now.
no,
And part of it is just bringing an idea of positivity to people and say, you know what, we're going to figure a way out of this and get through this, and
yeah.
just uplifting people just to get them in a better feeling place. And wherever I go, Karen, I try to make people feel a little better than when I started the conversation. So
Yeah.
that's part of it, is just moving fast on our feet and being positive about the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to shift from that and talk about your very exciting project and being the founder of Imagery to Life, which looks incredible. So can you share with us, or our audience, what and how your passion for not only photography, but for creating such a beautiful business and project?
Oh my gosh, Karen, thank you. Thank you for talking about this, because it has been a real passion of mine, to the point of being dedicated day after day, week after week, month after month, of 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 bringing a sense of joy to kids, especially health challenge kids, or anybody that doesn't get a chance to get out much in nature. But this was all an evolution. I was just taking pictures ever since I was a kid. My dad used to have his Polaroid camera, taking pictures of home as his mortgage business. I was fascinated with photography, kept doing that, having a great time with it. And fast forward, uh, some years back, some really valued clients of mine leased the entire Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco. and they called it the Innovation Hangar. And they gathered creative ideas from all over, kind of as a think tank in the Palace of Fine Arts, to have an imagination of what things could you think of, kind of like a think tank for innovation.
Yes.
And so Dan's taking me through there one day, Karen, and we come up to this picture, and he says, "Tim, watch this." And he takes his phone and he holds it up to the picture on the wall, and the image starts to come life in his phone. I thought, how did you do that?
Yeah.
And he says, I don't know, Tim. It's just this new technology and something that somebody here has been working on. I said, oh my gosh. With my excitement of photography, I thought, I think there's something really big here. So I wound up digging in and getting some extra equipment, of camera equipment, and I wound up getting some special microphones, and I wound up figuring out how to integrate my passion for nature with this process, this wizardry of technology that brings images to life within a phone when you hover the phone over the picture. And so that spawned that idea. And then, I was talking with some friends of mine, the head of fundraising for Stanford Ronald McDonald House, and I said, I got an idea. If you had like an image in the lobby that people, the family could say, hey, look, Johnny, or look, Sarah, look at this picture, look how it comes to life, and give them a little glimpse of nature when they can't get outside. How cool would that be? Oh, that would be so great. And then I thought, what about the kids that can't even get out of their beds? What about them? And so I evolved to do an entire book uh, of images and put them in a collection so that they could have an entire book to look at.
Amazing. Wow. So can you share with us more about the imagery to life for the audience who does not know? So what is the process? Like, is it, just a little around the technology itself?
Well, the technology itself was, at least from my knowledge, it was created by a company called Aurasma.
Okay.
A number of years ago, and they had this ability where they could put basically the camera of a phone on an image, recognize the image, and then what you do is you marry a video to that picture. And so the technology was so great that eventually Aurasma caught the attention of Hewlett Packard, or HP, and HP bought the company and rebranded it as HP Reveal after a period of time.
Yeah.
And so they had it in that space for a period of time. And the technology is so great, and it creates, if you do it really craftily, you can create the illusion that the picture actually does come to life, because if the video is identical to where you have the still picture, then when it's playing, all of a sudden, oh my gosh, how did you do this?
Yeah.
It creates a sense of wonder in people that look at it. It's really fun.
Amazing. So what would you say some of your biggest career highlights have been?
Oh my. Well, as you're talking about the subject of the imagery, I have to say, Karen, that it's opened doors that I would have never have imagined.
Yeah.
I'll share this little story with you. It's rather fun. I was in Buck's Restaurant in Woodside, and it's the places itself is full of innovation. They have things hanging on the walls of all kinds of things in high-tech land, and big transactions have been made just on napkins, and people with ideas meeting there, and some high-level people live in that area, Woodside, Portola Valley, and Atherton. And anyway, I was in there one later Saturday afternoon, and in walks Elon Musk. And I thought,
wow,
I always thought I would meet him. And so he came in with a couple of ladies, and I happened to be going out to the car to get a prototype of my imagery book. Mm-hmm. And as I'm rounding the table, for whatever reason, the lady that was with Elon just looks and smiles and waves at me and says, hello. And I look and smile and say hello back. And And then I glanced over at Elon and said, "And you look really familiar." And he replied, kind of tongue in cheek, "Well, I do get around a little bit." And with that, I just continued out to the car because I didn't want to interrupt, what they were doing. They were just relaxing, having a good time. And I thought, I just got such a feeling of energy of such a good, grounded person,
Yeah,
despite the fact that he's one of the biggest change makers, if not the biggest change maker on the planet. And I had
100%.
such a respect for him. So when I came back in, I said, I just wanted to say thank you for the tremendous change maker on the planet you are, for all the things that you do and all the people you inspire. He said,
Yeah.
"Well, thanks a lot." And with that, I said, "Well, have a great time here, and one of my favorite restaurants here," and sat down, and while the other ladies were going around a little later looking at all the fun things in the restaurant, he came over and said, "You mind if I sit down for a minute?" I said, "No, have a seat." So we talked about some really exciting things in my mind: the Boring Company, SpaceX, and a little bit of Tesla. And after a bit, I said, "Elon, I'd like to share something with you that's really passionate on my plate. And it's this book I'm been working on. And here, take this phone and hover the picture like you're taking a picture of it and watch what happens." And he does that. And he goes, "Wow, this is really cool. I got to show this to my girlfriend." So he brings her over. And after a couple minutes, she just looks at him and says, "Elon, how is this possible?" And he just smiles and says, "Well, we're in Silicon Valley, the land of innovation."
Yeah, for sure.
And then she said, "Tim, this is so great." She says, "I work with the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, and I want to introduce you to some people." I said, "That would be great." And I thought I would hear from her, but Elon said, "Tell you what, Tim, here's my contact information. Let's stay in touch." So I sent him an
Wow.
email, said, "Hey, great to meet you. Thanks again for all that you do on the planet." And that was that. And then about a week later, I get an email back from Elon. He said, "Tim, great to meet you too. How much would it cost to give an uplifting experience for the kids at Children's Hospital?" I thought,
Jeez.
wow.
Amazing. Amazing. Wow.
So that was just, that's just one example. And because of the book, I've met just some really great people that care to make a difference.
Mm.
And like fella Doug Leffen, who runs the distraction therapy at Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, I dove
Mm.
into that. And after he saw what I'd done with the book, he said, "Tim, what you've created here could not be more valuable for what we're trying to do here."
That's
So,
amazing. Wow.
so it
So,
is,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, it sent me on a path of a trajectory, Karen, that I never, never could have predicted.
No, for sure. And that's the nice thing is that these things just happen organically, I believe, and they happen when the timing is right. So that's
Yep.
amazing.
Yeah.
So when you decided to create the book, was there a particular theme or message you wanted to give through this book?
There really is. I've always been, how should I say this, Karen, an uplifter.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to not just give whoever saw the book like a connection with nature when they can't get at it, but I wanted to inspire them to say, "You know what, you can do this, you can beat this." And I thought, well, the best way to do that is with what I felt to be really notable quotes, uh, quotes that could inspire people. And interestingly enough, even though I was initially thinking this was going to be intended for health challenged kids, the people I really wanted to inspire were the adults, the people around the kids, whether it's their parents or the people in healthcare trying to help the kids, whatever.
Yeah.
And so the quotes were timeless, going way back in time, uh, whether it's Aristotle or people way back that just had really good, inspiring things to say, or Hippocrates. And so I put those in the book as well, just to help inspire people.
Gee, that's amazing. So, where did your inspiration for the book come from?
Well, there, oh boy, I think about that for a minute. This
Sorry.
was, no, that's okay. This was going back to there's an event by a fellow by the name of Kevin Hall. He created a book called Aspire, and he showcased a number of words in terms of the power of what those words were. And he created an event called the Genshai Life Mastery Retreat. And Genshai, interestingly, as an aside, is he refers to it as a secret word, and the word means never do anything but say words to somebody that helps uplift them, and never have any disparaging words to say about another person.
Yeah.
And that includes yourself. So it was all about an uplifting environment. And in the course of that, one of the guest speakers there, Keegan Gerhardt, who's a top pastry chef. Oh my gosh, I should introduce Keegan to you. That's another thing, another name that comes to my mind. He said, you're in this quiet space and you get to detach yourself from all the noise out there. And Kevin said at a certain point, if you could do anything you wanted to do, what would you do? And I gave it some real deep thought. I thought, I would like to be not necessarily the biggest or the greatest or the most, of most recognition, but I would like to be among the most significant photographers out there in terms of helping influence people. And that's where the idea was spawned, right there in that moment.
Amazing. So that leads me to the final two questions. What are the 3 key pieces of advice you would give to other entrepreneurs or others looking to get into the consulting and real estate industry or creative space? And what legacy would you like to leave?
Oh my. Karen, you ask really good questions. Oh my gosh. Well, I think first off is love what you do.
Yes.
Just really with a passion, love what you do. If you don't, someone who does will always outrun you.
For sure.
And I think in the world of, because I've for a long time been in the world of sales, actually in the sense maybe we're all involved in sales.
Yes.
Whether it's having a family and having a wife or a husband or whatever you do in life. But in the business world, I think being looked upon as a valued advisor versus selling something.
Yeah.
When you make it all about them, that's really significant and a cornerstone of mine. And I think the third, which is kind of how I'm wired, is get in the zone and just honing the skill of asking really good questions, which my compliments to you, Karen, you're really good at questions. Asking really good questions and thoughtful questions, and listen well and immerse yourself in their world.
Yes. Amazing. And what legacy would you like to leave?
Oh my. My gosh.
I know that's always a difficult one for people to answer. Sorry.
Yeah, that's something to contemplate for a moment. I think making a difference for people one person at a time.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we may think, well, how big an influence am I? Am I on a big stage? Well, I think we can make a difference every day.
Yeah.
And then you never know where that trail ends. If you help uplifting one person, maybe that person winds up carrying the thread and paying it forward and helping another person.
For sure.
And a story that just comes to mind is the story of a fellow that comes over the edge of a beach and sees somebody throwing something in the water over and over again, leaning down, throwing in the water. The starfish story. You know the starfish story.
But please go ahead, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't know.
Well, it's a significant story in the sense of the fellow finally comes close enough and it winds up being a little kid and says, so what are you doing? And she says, well, I'm throwing starfish into the water. He says, well, I can see that that's what you're doing, but why are you doing that? And he said, well, the tide is really low right now, and all these starfish are out stranded in the sand, and I'm taking one at a time and throwing them as far out in the water as I can, because if they get in water, they'll be fine, but if they stay on the shore, they'll die.
Yeah, for sure.
And the guy says, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, how can you possibly make a change? I mean, there got to be thousands of starfish on this beach, let alone all the beaches of the world. I mean, how can you possibly make a difference? And with that, little boy leans over, picks up another starfish, throws it as far out in the water as he can, and looks him straight in the eye, says, made a difference for that one.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a great story.
And it's a never ending connection for that. And I think, and the connection one person at a time could also be in front of a larger audience, or maybe, for instance, like the Imagery to Life project that I put forth. And I created not only the book, but I decided to create it in an app on an iPhone, and that can transfer to thousands of people, still helping one person or one kid or one older person that can't get out of nature, but just from a phone without having to go anywhere, they can do that. And in the Apple world, it's really been a fun accomplishment, because that one little thing can come to life right within the phone, not even with a secondary app. And I think of there's something to mention to you, which I think would be fun to share. There's a quote by a woman that I think, if I can kind of locate this to read this to you. It's by Rachel Carson, who's got reputation as an environmentalist some years ago. And she said, if I had influence with the good fairy who is supposed to preside over the christening of all children, I should ask that her gift to each child in the world would be a sense of wonder so indestructible that it would last throughout life.
Wow, that's amazing. Really amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So, thanks for joining us today. And if people want to connect with you, what is the best platforms to do
so? Well, thank you for that. One is a reference to the book, Imagery to Life. That's imagerytolifebook.com.
Mm-hmm.
And as an adjunct to that, I also created a website referencing all the healing power of nature that I could find, whether it's quotes or articles or even TED Talks. And
Okay.
that website is nature2healing.com. It's all spelled out, nature2healing.com. And then just if you want to see some examples of my photography, just that goes way back to timblakeimagery.com. And people can also follow me on Instagram. I'm at Tim Blake Imagery. And the only other thing to share with you is just one thought I like to live by, is something that I'll borrow from my friend Kevin Hall, who wrote Aspire, is live in crescendo. Always aspiring to do better.
Yeah, amazing. Awesome. So hopefully we can have you back in the future and see where you're at with your imagery journey and everything else. And just thanks for your time.
Karen, thank you. Really appreciate you doing this. And my gosh, thanks for all that you do, and just honor to be here. So hope this has been helpful or encouraging to people with a few words that I could share. And I'll sure look forward to staying in touch with you.
Great.
Appreciate you.
Thanks so much.